Hello everyone, I look forward to your advice in the comments. I'm not usually one to air my personal life online, but I'm stuck in my own head right now and could really use some outside perspective. My wife Sophie and I have been together for almost 10 years. To anyone who looked at us from the outside, we seem like one of those solid couples: Sunday brunch traditions, framed photos of our hiking trips lining the hallway, a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon because she loved to bake. People joked that we were disgustingly stable. But lately, something has been off. It started small, subtle enough that I brushed it aside at first. Sophie began taking more and more errand runs. Grocery shopping, quick trips to the store, just grabbing a few things. Sometimes she'd be gone for hours and come back with a single bag of items that didn't match the story she gave me about sales or coupons. She also got weirdly protective of her phone. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen, but now it's glued to her hand. I've caught her giggling at messages in a way I haven't heard in years, that almost teenage, giddy laugh. When I asked about it, she snapped that I was being paranoid, that stress was making me read too much into things. Still, there was a quiet fracture behind her smile. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And as much as I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, deep down, I knew something didn't add up. The moment everything shifted came on what was supposed to be a boring Saturday errand. Sophie and I went to the grocery store together, the way we often did. She was cheerful, humming under her breath, tossing things into the cart while scrolling on her phone between aisles. It was almost too normal, like she was playing a role. Halfway through, she handed me a list and said, "Go grab bread, I'll check the cleaning supplies aisle." I didn't think much of it. But when I grabbed the bread and came back, Sophie still wasn't in sight. I turned the corner to the cleaning aisle and froze. There she was, half hidden between shelves stacked with paper towels and detergent, not alone. She was wrapped in the arms of a man I'd never seen before. He had his hand on the small of her back, their foreheads nearly touching. And then I heard it, her voice, hushed and soft in a way she hadn't used with me in years. "Missed you, Daniel," she whispered. Daniel. Not me. I ducked back before they saw me, heart pounding so hard I thought it would echo down the aisles. My palms were sweaty against the bread bag, my stomach twisting like I might throw up right there in the store. 1,000 thoughts rushed at once. Was this real? Had she been sneaking him into every grocery trip? Was this why she took so long on errands? When Sophie finally returned to the cart a few minutes later, she was all smiles. "Found the cleaner we like," she chirped, dropping a bottle in. I stared at her, wondering how she could look so calm when I'd just seen her with another man. I didn't say anything then. I swallowed the words, finished shopping, bagged the groceries like a robot. But inside, something in me cracked wide open. The fracture I'd sensed behind her smile wasn't imagined, I'd just seen it in flesh and blood. I managed to keep my mouth shut all the way home, unloading groceries, nodding while Sophie chattered about recipes she wanted to try. I don't know how I held it together. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I just wanted to give her one last chance to come clean. But when she tossed her phone on the counter and went upstairs to change, I couldn't do it anymore. My voice came out harsher than I intended. "Sophie, who's Daniel?" She froze halfway up the stairs, then turned with this look, part confusion, part annoyance. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you," I said. My hands were shaking, but I kept going. "At the store. In the cleaning aisle. You weren't alone." Her expression hardened instantly, the fake innocence gone. "So now you're spying on me in grocery stores? Do you have any idea how insane you sound?" I told her exactly what I saw, his hand on her back, her whispering his name. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Wow. You're really losing it, Mark. That was just a coworker I ran into. He was telling me something about a project, and you turn it into some soap opera." I pushed. "Coworkers don't hold each other like that. And you called him by his name like you missed him." Her eyes flashed. "God, you're paranoid. No wonder I don't tell you half the things going on in my life. You twist everything. Do you hear yourself?" Stalking me through aisles, making up stories? It's pathetic. I asked if I could see her phone. She snatched it up from the counter like it was a lifeline. Absolutely not. I don't owe you proof every time your imagination runs wild. The fight spiraled from there. She accused me of being controlling, of suffocating her, of needing therapy. Not once did she deny it with any real conviction. It was all deflection, anger, and making me question my own eyes. By the time she stormed upstairs and slammed the bedroom door, I was left standing in the kitchen surrounded by grocery bags, wondering if I was actually going crazy. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I'd seen what I'd seen. And Sophie's bitchy, dismissive reaction only confirmed it. She was lying. That night was one of the longest of my life. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Sophie's steady breathing beside me, wondering how she could sleep so soundly after what just happened. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment in the aisle, the way she leaned into him, the softness in her voice. A softness I hadn't heard directed at me in years. The anger came first. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. How dare she make me feel like the crazy one? I'd seen it. I wasn't imagining things. But then, as the hours ticked by, the anger dissolved into something heavier. Grief. I kept flashing back to our early years together. The way we'd laughed until we cried on hiking trips. The Sunday brunches where she'd steal bites from my plate. The nights when she'd lean her head on my chest and say she couldn't imagine life without me. Those memories used to be comforting. Now they felt poisoned, like souvenirs from a life that had quietly died without me noticing. In the morning, Sophie acted like nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, hummed while she fried eggs, even kissed my cheek like we were still that happy couple in our framed photos. I felt like a ghost, sitting there at the table with a knot in my stomach, wondering if I was the only one who still cared that our marriage was bleeding out. That's when clarity hit me. The worst part of betrayal isn't just the cheating. It's the gaslighting. The way someone you love looks you in the eye and makes you question your own reality. That night in bed I'd caught myself wondering if maybe I was paranoid, if maybe I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. But no, I couldn't let her lies erase my truth. I realized then that I couldn't keep drifting like this, waiting for her to hand me honesty she had no intention of giving. If I wanted answers, if I wanted peace, I was going to have to dig deeper, no matter how much it hurt. By the time the weekend rolled around, I knew I couldn't just sit there and let Sophie keep rewriting reality. Every time I looked at her, I heard her voice in that aisle, soft, almost tender, and then her sharp, bitchy laugh in the kitchen as she called me paranoid. If I didn't gather real proof, I worried I'd let her gaslight me into thinking none of it ever happened. So I started small. The next time she asked me to grab something from her tote, I pretended to rummage for chapstick but instead found a crumpled receipt shoved in the side pocket. It wasn't from the grocery store. It was from a wine bar downtown, 2 glasses of Merlot, a cheese board, and a dessert plate. Time-stamped for the exact night she'd told me she was running late at work. My stomach flipped. That same evening, while she was showering, I checked her coat pocket. That's when I found it, a slim, cheap phone I'd never seen before. My pulse spiked. I powered it on no passcode. And there it was. Daniel, same place tomorrow? Can't wait to see you again. Sophie, yes. Let's not linger too long this time. I snapped photos of every message, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the thing. But that wasn't enough. I needed to see them together again, not hidden between detergent shelves, not just a few words on a screen. Real proof. So the next time she announced she was meeting Jenna for dinner, I grabbed my keys after she left and followed. My heart pounded as I trailed her car downtown, headlights catching glimpses of her taillights at every turn. Sure enough, she didn't head anywhere near Jenna's neighborhood. She pulled into the same little wine bar from the receipt. From across the street, I watched through the window as she slid into a booth. Minutes later, Daniel appeared. He didn't hesitate, leaned right in and kissed her cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world. She beamed, that same glowing smile she hadn't given me in years. I snapped photos with my phone, the glow of the screen reflecting off the windshield as proof etched itself into pixels. My chest felt like it was splitting open, but at least I wasn't crazy. At least I had the truth in my hands. Driving home that night, I realized something terrifying. I didn't even feel shocked anymore. I just felt tired. Tired of being lied to. Tired of begging for scraps of honesty. Tired of living in a house that smelled like cinnamon but reeked of betrayal. The following week felt like walking through a house filled with invisible landmines. Every sound, every glance between us carried a question I wasn't allowed to ask. Sophie moved through our home like nothing had changed, laughing at her phone, humming while she cooked, casually brushing past me in the hallway with that same brittle smile. It was almost worse than an open fight. At least fights meant acknowledgement. This was theater. By Thursday night, I snapped. She told me she was going to the store for a couple of things we forgot. Her voice was airy, but her eyes avoided mine. I gave her 10 minutes, then followed. My chest ached the whole drive, equal parts dread and adrenaline. And sure enough, her car wasn't at the grocery store at all. It was parked downtown, outside that same dim little bar I'd driven past once before. I parked far enough away to watch without being seen. Through the fogged windows, I saw Sophie slip into a booth, her coat draped neatly beside her. Moments later, he appeared, Daniel. He slid in effortlessly, leaning close like they'd done this 100 times. The look on her face when she saw him wasn't polite or casual. It was relief. Joy. A kind of softness I hadn't been on the receiving end of in years. When he brushed a strand of hair from her face and she leaned into his touch, I felt my stomach drop. But the final blow came a few minutes later, when she kissed him. Not a stolen, guilty kiss. A slow, confident one. Like there was nothing in the world to hide. I don't even remember how long I sat there, my fingers white-knuckled around the steering wheel, the rain tapping against the windshield. A part of me wanted to march inside, slam the evidence down on the table, demand an explanation in front of everyone. But another part, maybe the more rational part, knew she'd just twist it. She'd smirk, roll her eyes, call me paranoid in front of him and the bartender and whoever else happened to be watching. So instead, I pulled out my phone. Hands shaking, I snapped photo after photo through the glass. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. It didn't make me feel better, but it did anchor me. No amount of gaslighting could erase what I'd captured. I drove home in silence, the rain blurring the city lights into streaks of color. By the time Sophie came back hours later, smelling of whiskey and perfume I didn't recognize, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Screenshots, receipts, photos, all lined up like a case file. When she walked in, she barely looked at me. "You're still up," she said, like she'd been at yoga or a late movie with friends. I gestured at the screen. "Sit down." My voice didn't even sound like mine. She glanced at the photos, the messages, the receipts. For one flicker of a second, I saw her facade falter. Then she straightened, crossing her arms. "You've been following me," she snapped. "This is insane, Mark. Do you even hear yourself? You've become obsessed." "Obsessed with the truth," I said. "Something you clearly can't manage anymore." Her lips curled into a smirk. "You think a few blurry pictures prove anything? He's just a friend. You're the one making this ugly." That was the breaking point for me, not the kiss, not the phone, not the perfume. It was that look in her eyes, sharp and dismissive, like I was beneath her, like the life we'd built together was a joke she'd already walked out of. And in that moment, something inside me went quiet. Not rage, not grief, just a kind of clarity I'd been avoiding. Whatever we had was already gone. The only question left was whether I had the strength to leave before her lies swallowed me whole. The morning after my breaking point, the house felt like a stage set after the play was over. Silent, hollow, with props left scattered around. Sophie acted like nothing had happened. She floated into the kitchen in her robe, poured coffee, and asked if I wanted toast. Like the photos, the burner phone, the receipts, none of it existed. I watched her butter bread while I sat at the table with my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. Finally, I asked, "Are you really going to stand there and pretend?" She didn't even look up. Pretend what? That you weren't in his arms last night. That you didn't kiss him. That you don't have a second phone you've been hiding. My voice cracked on the last word. She sighed, as if I just reminded her about a bill she forgot to pay. Then she turned, leaned against the counter, and leveled me with that sharp little smirk. Mark, you are exhausting. You see monsters everywhere. You don't trust me, and honestly? That's on you. Something inside me twisted. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was her utter lack of remorse. She didn't care that I had proof. She didn't care that I was in pain. She cared about keeping control of the story. The rest of the day passed in stilted silence. She clattered dishes louder than usual, hummed exaggeratedly while folding laundry, like I was the one who had messed up. At one point she tossed a sarcastic, "Maybe you should see a therapist, Mark. Obsession like this isn't healthy." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped outside and called my brother. I hadn't told him much before, just that Sophie and I were having problems. This time I spilled everything: the grocery store aisle, the bar, the hotel receipts, the photos. My voice shook, but he listened quietly. When I finally stopped, he said, "You know you're not crazy, right? You know you don't deserve this." That simple reassurance cracked something open in me. For weeks, Sophie had been twisting reality, making me feel like a paranoid fool. Hearing someone else say out loud that I wasn't insane felt like oxygen. That night, I didn't crawl into bed beside her. I grabbed a blanket and slept on the couch. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of her laughter drifting from upstairs as she scrolled through her phone. She wasn't worried. She wasn't afraid. She thought I'd bend, the way I always had, and let her version of the truth replace my own. But as I lay there in the dark, I realized I'd crossed a threshold. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't unhear her whispering his name in that grocery store aisle. I couldn't pretend that the marriage we'd built still existed. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a strange kind of calm. The shock had burned away. The anger had drained out. What remained was resolve. I knew I had to make a decision soon, not just for my own sanity, but because living like this, trapped in a house that smelled like cinnamon and lies, was killing me slowly. The aftermath wasn't about Sophie anymore. It was about me. Who I wanted to be. And whether I'd finally choose my dignity over her deception. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and the sour taste of regret in my mouth. Sophie was already gone. She'd left a sticky note on the counter, out running errands. "Don't wait up." No explanation, no smiley face, no sign that she even cared that her marriage was crumbling. Just errands. I sat there staring at the note, and something in me clicked. I couldn't keep drifting, waiting for her to hand me honesty she had no intention of giving. I needed to stop reacting and start planning. So I made a list. Literally. On a piece of notebook paper, I wrote: protect myself financially. Gather every piece of proof. Decide if I want to try therapy or walk away. Stop letting Sophie control the story. That afternoon, I dug out our file cabinet and pulled copies of everything: mortgage papers, bank accounts, insurance. I scanned them to a private email Sophie didn't know about. It felt sneaky, but I wasn't going to let her lies spill into money and paperwork too. Then I organized my case file, all the screenshots, the receipts, the photos from the bar. I wasn't sure yet if I'd need them for divorce court or just for my own sanity, but I needed them in one place. Every time I looked at them, my chest tightened, but it also gave me strength. Proof meant I wasn't crazy. That night, when Sophie got home late again, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, she found me at the kitchen table with my laptop open. She rolled her eyes. "Still obsessing? God, Mark, you're like a detective in a bad movie." I didn't argue. I just said, I booked an appointment with a counselor. Her eyebrows shot up. "For us?" "No," I said. "For me." That shut her up for a moment. Then she scoffed, poured herself wine, and muttered, "Good. Maybe they'll teach you how to stop being paranoid. I didn't rise to it. For once, her bitchy little digs didn't land. Because for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control back. Lying awake later, I thought about what I wanted my life to look like. Not the fake smiles, not the hollow brunches, not the constant second guessing. Peace. Honesty. Even if it meant starting over from scratch. And the more I pictured it, the clearer it became. Whatever Sophie decided to do, I couldn't build that life while she kept rewriting reality. The plan wasn't finished yet. But for the first time, I had one. And that felt like a lifeline. By the time the weekend came, I knew I couldn't keep circling the same storm. The evidence was there. The lies were obvious. What was missing was my decision. Saturday morning, Sophie padded into the kitchen in her robe, scrolling her phone, humming like she hadn't just detonated our marriage. I sat at the table with a folder of printouts, the texts, the receipts, the photos. My hands didn't shake this time. I was past shock. Past anger. When she finally noticed the stack in front of me, she raised an eyebrow. "What's this? Another one of your paranoid projects?" I looked her straight in the eye. "This is proof. And this is me saying I'm done pretending." Her smirk faltered. For once, she didn't have a sharp comeback. She just crossed her arms, shifting from foot to foot like she wanted to be anywhere else. After a long silence, she muttered, "So what, you're leaving?" I took a deep breath. "I'm moving out for now. I've booked counseling alone. I need to figure out if there's even anything left to save here. But I'm not going to keep living in a house where I'm gaslighted daily." Her jaw tightened. "You're overreacting. Everyone makes mistakes." I shook my head. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now I'm making mine. I grabbed my bag, the folder, and my keys. She didn't chase me. She didn't apologize. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching me walk out. The air outside was cold, sharp, almost cleansing. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. Painful relief, but relief all the same. Because the hardest part wasn't losing Sophie. It was finally choosing myself. It's been a couple of weeks since I walked out of that house, and I can finally breathe again. I'm crashing at my brother's for now, and the quiet feels strange, but in a good way. No fake smiles, no perfume-covered lies, no constant second-guessing myself. Just space to think. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't catching Sophie in the grocery store aisle, or even watching her kiss him in that bar. The hardest part was how easily she made me doubt myself. The gaslighting, the sharp little digs, the way she turned every confrontation into me being paranoid. That's what really eats at you, not just the betrayal, but the erosion of your own trust in your instincts. I've started therapy. I'm not going for answers about her anymore, I'm going for answers about me. Why I stayed quiet so long. Why I let her twist me into silence. Why I kept clinging to a version of our marriage that had already rotted away. The sessions are hard, but they feel like rebuilding muscle after an injury. Painful, but necessary. I don't know what Sophie tells people now. Maybe she paints me as controlling, maybe she downplays everything. Honestly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that I know what I saw, what I lived through, and what I survived. If you're reading this and you're in that fog, noticing cracks in your partner's smile, catching stories that don't quite add up, please listen to your gut. You're not paranoid. You're not crazy. The truth has a way of showing itself if you're brave enough to look. My advice? Gather proof if you need it, but don't lose yourself in the process. Protect your peace. Because at the end of the day, no relationship is worth suffocating in lies. Thanks to everyone who's followed my story here. Writing it out has been its own kind of therapy. I don't know exactly what my future looks like, but I know it's mine again. And that's more than enough.